All right, and we are here again, and we are back again. As always, I'm Matt.
I'm Drew.
And this is our sequel podcast. This is the only movie sequel podcast where we take a sequel from the past and find out if, in fact, it is worth going back, ... again. And we are continuing on season 2 of our action movie sequels, and today we are doing a follow-up to the 2011 The Raid, and we are doing the 2014 The Raid 2.
Gotta say, I like the Too Fast, Too Furious kind of naming system better than just these slapping 2 behind it. Does it even have a subtitle?
Yeah, The Raid 2 does have a subtitle. I'm probably butchering this, but it's called Berendal, which in Indonesian, I believe, means kind of like thugs or criminals or something like that. Like building of thugs.
Oh, okay.
Or something like that. But yeah, The Raid 2 comes out in 2014. It's got a budget of $4.5 million. It's only got a box office that's listed as $6.6 million, but they're not accounting for Japan and other countries with that. They're only accounting for American dollars. So it probably made more money than that, than they're saying online. It's got a runtime of 2 hours and 30 minutes. It's directed, written, and edited by Gareth Evans, and it's starring, and keep in mind I'm going to butcher all these names, so I apologize. Aiko Uwais, Yayan Ruhian, Sisept Arif Arif Putra, and Tio Pakisteo. The Raid 2 picks up after the events of the first raid, where Rama, a gifted fighter and officer of the law, is swayed to go undercover, infiltrate, and expose the top leaders of the underground crime world. Things turn for the worse when a family coup causes an all-out turf war, forcing Rama to fight his way through so that he can finally return to his wife and son and end this once and for all.
Oh, I had a basic question. Are the antagonists at all related to the ones from the first one, or are these completely new bad guys?
Well, you were actually asking about, like, why is Rama our lead? Why is he kind of forced to participate in the events of the second raid? And I think
it's the same as Too Fast, Too Furious. The cops are blackmailing him.
Well, it's that, but it's the repercussions of the first raid. Because in the first raid, all these cops are infiltrating this building. The lies that they had the
authority or the clearance.
Yeah, the clearance to do that. When really this was kind of an underground kind of operation that I guess the dirtier cops were orchestrating. So when Rama and these officers are kind of met by, what do you want to call this guy, this detective that's kind of planning everything? Or this,
from the first one?
No, from the second one.
Oh.
The guy that's kind of pulling the strings in this. I guess he's just kind of like...
The commissioner?
Yeah, commissioner or something
Sure.
like that. The commissioner is basically twisting Rama's arm and he's saying, well, we're going to clean your record and we're going to make this whole thing from the first raid disappear if you play along and do what I want you to do in this second
Did he do anything implicating in the first one? I thought he was just like...
Well, that's the thing is that...
His superior did.
There's no way for him to convey that he wasn't one of the dirty cops as well. You know what I mean? So his hands are kind of tied regardless. Obviously, this commissioner, he's basically explaining to him, he's like, I know that you're one of the good ones, but a lot of other people won't. So if you want to, make it out of here safely, you're going to have to do my little plan, which is part 1 Prison Break a little bit, part 2 The Fast and the Furious, and then I guess part 3 just turns into The Raid again, in a sense.
Yeah, there's a lot of setup before we get to the raid.
I think that this movie is an important movie to do on the podcast because just as much as Lethal Weapon 2 is kind of the blueprint to how to do an American style action comedy cop movie, I think that this is kind of the blueprint for how to film at least just fight sequences. And what they're doing is they're basing a lot of this fighting off of Indonesian martial art of Pencak Silat with fight choreography by Uwais and Yaya Ruhian. And Yaya Ruhian is one of the actors that's in the Raid 1 and 2. He's the guy that they sacrifice in the Raid 2 when they all kill him in the snow.
Oh, the guy from John Wick?
Yeah, the guy from John Wick, exactly. But yeah, so that's why I think it's important to do it on this because it not only is it a good representation of other countries, but it's just a really nice example of how you can entertain people through hard work of choreography.
Yeah, because we have these action movies so far that have been buddy cop movies with the banter and the chemistry, and then Too Fast, Too Furious, which is car focused. And I know we haven't done a lot so far, but it's nice to have one on the list that so perfectly checks the box of great choreography.
Yeah, there's no buddy cop angle in this movie. If anything, it's just a lot of angry cops or a lot of kind of dirty cops, or you can't really trust anybody. Everybody's tried to kill everyone at some point, even family members. So let's kind of dive into some things that we like and don't like about this movie. What I will say that is impressive with the Raid 1 and 2 is the budget, right? The first Raid has a budget of $1.1 million. And considering that it's like set in one location, that they're kind of doing this on the fly, they don't really know what it's going to be. It's really impressive. And I believe from what I was reading, they had a kind of a bigger idea of what they wanted to do with this story, which I think is what they got to do with the Raid 2, but they didn't have that kind of money at the time. So they took the money that they have with 1.1 million and they kind of wrote a new story that took place in one location, which is, I don't know, I just think that's pretty cool that they really believed in the material they had, so they kind of changed it a little bit so they could do it the first time. And then once they started getting good reviews, they got a little bit more money, and then they got to really kind of flesh out this story. So it's really noticeably different from the first frame of this movie, where you get this big wide kind of like, I don't even know what you would call it. Like, it's just this big field and they're digging bodies in the foreground. And then we're going to reveal Rama's brother is one of these people that's going to get shot and put in the hole. But there's a lot of scenes like that, or at least establishing shots, where it's like, okay, this is going to be a different movie. It's going to look better. It's going to be a little bit more mature, and it's going to take the time to tell its story, probably because that's always what they wanted to do. But with the first one, they just needed kind of a stepping off point.
I can see that a little bit more. There's more intentional development in the plot, more so than just like we need another action set piece.
And it's more interesting because the first raid is fun, but to be honest, you're kind of just waiting for the next person for Rama to fight. Every hallway that he turns, and whereas in the second one, there's kind of different variations of who's raiding what. It's a little bit more obvious in the first one what we're raiding. In the second one, there's kind of new interpretations of it, like, raiding a crime family and lying, like raiding a prison. The cops raiding your life and forcing you to kind of continue working jobs for them and whatnot. So the thing that I like about the second one is that it actually had like a plot, and it kept you guessing what was going to happen next. It wasn't reliant on the action, I don't think, to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's what the first one is definitely a classic, but it is reliant on the action because it all boils down to the choreography. I can respect that.
Yeah.
But this one definitely has the room to develop a lot more, especially insofar as the script goes and where it takes the action.
Some other stuff that I'll say about the Raid 2 that I liked was how much effort they put into kind of building some of these characters from the first Raid. We talked about it a little bit. But like in regards to, what's his name, Yayan Ruyan, this guy was really supposed to be just kind of like the crazy loose cannon guy in the first Raid, Whereas in the second one, he's still got some badass fight scenes, but we get to really see the ramifications of him being that wild card and living that life. Apparently he's got a daughter and a wife, and he's got like loyalty to all these different kind of families in this area. And when we meet him, he's really kind of down on his luck. And it's interesting because the first Raid is called Redemption with its subtitle.
Oh, the first one has a subtitle?
Yeah, the first one has a subtitle, which is Redemption. So this one's interesting because there's a lot of characters that are trying to find redemption in a sense. So if it was like, cheesy and hokey, I probably wouldn't have liked it as much. But for the most part, I found that it added more emotional weight to the movie, which was just surprising because you don't expect a movie where, people are holding a baseball bat and hammers to have like fleshed out characters.
I don't know. I can respect the development they gave his character, but I really thought it would have played better if they didn't do that. Because
Yeah, you didn't like it?
They kind of just fatten him up for sacrifice because they're like, okay, we're going to inject all this character backstory just so that you feel something when he dies in the next scene. And it's like,
yeah,
just give it a big reveal that it's this guy, and then give him one big fight scene. They gave him that first fight scene where he's just like, he's not even fighting professionals, he's just fighting thugs.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't really care about that.
I look at it as like motivation because I think what's important about that scene with him and his wife is that he's going to get betrayed in a moment, like a couple moments afterwards. And it's kind of the thing where this is what he gets for choosing the crime world over his family. The crime world turns his back on him. So when we kind of see him fighting desperately, we get to really understand why he's fighting.
It's not really his choice to go to the crime family, though.
Yeah, they don't go into that, like why he's choosing the crime family over his wife and his kid, but
I think they establish it as he has to for some reason. Not like he has to, like someone's forcing him to, but he has to because of who he is.
Well, like look at Rama. It's like the only reason why we open on the first Raid with Rama with his pregnant wife is so we have motivation to why he's fighting and why we want him to survive going forward.
Yeah.
Right. So I feel like they're just kind of copying and pasting that a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't mind it because with movies like this...
Well, he has a wife and a child too. You must care about him now, and he's dead.
I don't mind it though, because they could have spent those scenes kind of doing other stuff that probably would have been boring. Whereas after seeing this guy kick so much ass in the first one, it was kind of interesting just watching him sit quietly in a chair in like a nice restaurant and like stick out. So there were clever ways they went about it.
They're interesting scenes, but they don't build to his character. And when you're looking at 2.5-hour runtime,
Yeah.
I'm looking for stuff to cut.
Well, what is his character? You know, what are a lot
He's
of
the loose cannon. Like you don't need to give him the same backstory as your protagonist because he's going to get betrayed and we have to feel something when that happens.
Yeah.
It can just be another cool action scene where he shows up, oh, this is the guy you were talking about, and then there's a big fight scene where he takes out all these would-be assassins. Mm-hmm. You don't need all that setup for this character.
There's a lot of nuanced character stuff within this movie, even just in regards to like the next level wild cards that they introduce, which is the baseball bat guy, Hammer's lady, and then I don't even know what to call that other guy.
He's just a good fighter.
He's just a really good fighter. But they do a little bit of that with the Hammer girl and the baseball bat guy. I'm assuming that they're brother and sister.
Yeah, they do the boys thing where they're talking in sign language to each other.
Yeah, but even when like Rama's fighting the two of them in the hallway and he starts to like get the upper hand, you can see them, at least the baseball bat guy, you can see him get like emotionally frustrated that like his sister, or maybe the love of his life, is like killed by Rama in this hallway. I can appreciate, especially coming off of like Too Fast, Too Furious, where there is no emotional investment at all.
In the action.
In the action and in the characters, it's nice to see.
Well, they try in the characters.
They try.
They're not even trying in the action.
But they have everything going for them in these raid movies, where they have the action, they have the good direction, they have the good characters, and they have these nice little kind of tropes that each of these characters can kind of wear as a badge. But on top of that, then they're sprinkling in like these little nuanced emotions that's kind of, it's helping us, the audience, understand like why our characters are motivated to do what they're doing. And I can appreciate that.
Yeah. It's nice that they're not doing it through dialogue. They're doing it in the action when you're paying attention.
Yeah. The only other thing that I can kind of praise the second movie about is oftentimes when you do a sequel and you introduce all these new characters, you know, sometimes the new characters can be boring and they can be annoying, or, you know, it can be the wrong direction. But there are a plethora of new characters in this Raid 2 movie, and I honestly felt like I knew them all, and I thought they were all like decently interesting, even though they have kind of action movie tropes. Like, you know, we open the movie on the bad guy with the bad teeth and the cane, and he's like very calm and relaxed, and then you also have the cliche son of some crime boss who's like, you know, he wants his shot at the chair and he's gonna betray his father, and then you have the stubborn father. These are things we've seen before, but the way they go about it is like, yeah, we know you've seen this before, but this is our version of it. And it's hard for some sequels to do that. And I think that for the most part, they stuck the landing with it.
Yeah. I appreciated the villain who wasn't physically intimidating. He just looked like a goth kid who grew up. And even when he's like, has to do stuff, he like can't, because he's like, what does he do? Get a shotgun at the end and like misses a lot with it.
Yeah.
So I liked the idea of making the puppet master like, you know, he has no power if he doesn't have his people working around him.
Yeah.
They doubled down on that, and I liked the crime boss father who is all about the peace, because peace is profitable, it's stability, and when the son tries to, you know, mix things up a little bit, he's constantly trying with the Japanese gang, their main competitor, to smooth things over. And it would have worked if he didn't get, you know, like blown up.
Yeah, and you kind of, when we're watching this movie, we're kind of wondering where it's going. And I think a turning point in the movie is when it's Rama and the son, and they have the two, I guess they're strippers or they're prostitutes or something, and they're doing the karaoke and stuff. And I believe it's like the scene right after that where the dad boss tells Rama, like, I need you to like keep an eye on my son.
Yeah.
So that's what,
it might have been right before that.
Right before or after, but it's that middle part of the movie where, you know, because once Rama's in the family, we're like, what do we do now? Where are we going with this movie now? So it was nice that it kept taking a step up as to why we're fighting and what we're doing here in these locations.
Well, it's constantly changing because he's there at the beginning to keep an eye on the father. You need to get in good with the son in prison so that you can go to his father and keep an eye on him because he's the crime boss. This is the police. This is what they're giving him, Rama, as the mission. When he gets there, the father tells him, I need you to keep an eye on my son.
Yeah.
And so his attention shifts to the son, who he sees, especially through that karaoke scene, as a threat. And then it's interesting how that kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, or I don't even know if that's the right term, but that ends up being true because he is the one that ends up seizing control and forming the ally with the actual threat, the man who kills Rama's brother. And he's the one who instigates the whole climax where, everyone dies.
Yeah, it's a little bit like The Departed with Leonardo DiCaprio kind of infiltrating Jack Nicholson's organization because he's like, Rama's got the cop that he's only getting the information he's getting when the cop decides to tell Rama, right? Like we get the introduction with the commissioner at the beginning, but then he's really just a voice on the phone later down the road. But yeah, it helps kind of keep the tension up because Rama's not only keeping on this front for the cop, but then he's also, I guess, working for the dad as well. And then there's this other thing too, where apparently they've tried to infiltrate this family before with other undercover cops. So
yeah, and one's still there.
Yeah, there's another kind of right-hand man to the top crime boss who reveals later to Rama after he saves his life in that car chase that he was a former agent as well, but the agency kind of dropped him because they thought he went rogue or something like that. But he's telling him like while he's dying in the car.
Did he actually go rogue?
According to him, he didn't go rogue. And that's kind of the thing that he's warning Rama about with his commissioner is that, like, there is no out of this. There is no way to do your job and then go back to your family. The only way you're going to get out of this is if you kill everybody. And that's kind of our motivation why Rama decides to go back in and, I guess, raid that building at the end of it because he realizes that...
The final raid.
Yeah, the final raid is that if he continues to play with the commissioner and what he wants to do, he might never make it out of this world and he might just end up like... this other former agent that's now, dying in a chair.
Yeah, sacrificing himself for a boss who's dead.
Mm-hmm. So if we're done kind of, praising this movie, we can get into some stuff that we didn't necessarily like as much. And the only thing that I kind of want to bring up is Rama, okay? And Rama's like Superman, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like really good at fighting. And I guess my question to you is, what is Rama's flaw? Is he a flawed character? Because he seems to be pretty perfect. And in a normal movie, that might be like annoying or distracting, or it might feel like there's no stakes or threat. But it's weird with this movie because I didn't feel like he was a fleshed out character, but it didn't bother me as much. I just noticed it, but it wasn't a detriment to the movie. But what is Rama's flaw? Like, who is he besides just like, I guess he's just a bad father and husband because he won't go back to his wife, but he's really not allowed to as well.
I guess that's it, yeah. It's just that he's just a tool. He's just a tool that the police use. They're like so incompetent in one case where they just let crime thrive, but then they have so much sway over Rama that they're almost like they almost have complete domination over him.
Yeah. Well, it's like the thing of...
that's why I think he's more like a tool than a character.
Every threat that gets thrown at Rama, he adapts it.
He just punches it.
He just defeats. So the only time I ever felt like we got a moment of breath of understanding who this character was ironically at the end, where he looks out to all the new Japanese guards that come in after he just took out this whole warehouse and he just says, no, I'm done, right? And I guess that was kind of the motivation for him going forward, was just to finally be done with all this stuff. If I wanted to nitpick a little bit, I would have liked to see a little bit more of that struggle in the beginning and the middle of the movie of him not wanting to fight.
Well, we see it with the scene with his wife.
We see that, but we never see a moment where he doesn't want to fight. Like almost, Jackie Chan is really good in his movies of kind of doing defense fighting, where he doesn't want to fight, but he keeps getting pushed into corners and he gets getting pushed into like props like a ladder or like, a fridge or something like that, where he has to kind of adapt. And they do this smart thing with Jackie Chan kind of choreography, and there's videos that talk about this, where he's always losing until like the very end of the fight. So we always kind of see him kind of going down a hill and then he has to fight his way back up, but it's really entertaining. They could have probably kept some of that with Rama, because Rama just fights everybody and he's like really good at it and stuff, but we never see like, does he want to fight these people? Does he want to kill these people? He doesn't really have a moral indifference about murder.
Yeah.
He kind of just does it.
He's just a weapon.
And it's entertaining because what they do, instead of kind of giving him character stuff where it's like, how does he feel about this? They just keep raising the stakes, where they just keep getting new, like more and more intricate, dangerous fighters with more and more intricate weapons to have Rama face off against. And that's entertaining. Like, don't get me wrong.
Well, yeah, it's still entertaining. It's just very simple because you're just leaning into one element, which is the fighting. And then it's if we don't have anything else to this tool, or this character, then
Yeah.
what can we do to keep it interesting? You just make the fights more and more dangerous.
Yeah.
To where the biggest fight is literally, it's not a guy with a gimmick. It's not a wild card. It's not girl with a pair of hammers. It's just someone who's really, really good at fighting.
Yeah.
That's ultimately the main physical threat. The main threat in the film is not a gimmick or anything else. It's what we're talking about. It's just someone who's better at fighting, because that's the only thing Rama can do.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing that registers as a threat to the character.
Yeah, and I don't mind it. It's just like, you know, it would have been nice to see some kind of personal inner struggle with Rama as to how he feels about all this murder.
In the first one, he doesn't know he's being used, so it's forgivable. In this one, he knows he's being used,
Yeah.
and the writers just lean into that,
Yeah.
which is simple. It's not really good or bad. It's just more simple.
And there's scenes where Rama's like upset about it, like when he's talking on the phone to the cop. It's not like they don't do anything, but they probably could have done a little bit more. But like you said, it's already 2 hours and 30 minutes, so they're doing a lot. And I appreciate that they're spending more time kind of building out these other characters. Like, we've seen this a million times before, where we're going to introduce 3 new bad guys that all have a specialty, and we're going to see them do their thing for a little bit. But they really take their time in the Raid 2, kind of fleshing out, like that introduction of the baseball bat guy, the Hammers girl, and then Smiley. Those scenes are really fun. And they're really like, almost like Tarantino style. They're very like dragged out, and they take their time, to where when you see this girl with the hammers on the subway, and then all the people are running past her, and all the guards bring out their little mini samurai knives, like those are just really fun scenes. So it's an interesting technique of execution of how, like, this stuff really doesn't matter to the story, but I'm not complaining about it. Like, I was still engaged the entire time.
Well, that's the thing, is they build threats that the protagonist has to face directly. And, you know, I feel like, honestly, in Tarantino, there's a little bit more of a development where there are threats in other ways than just their physical violence. But in the Raid 2, you just need to establish that they're, you know, physically capable.
Yeah. I guess if we don't have anything else we really want to talk about, I think we can kind of just jump into the ranking of this. So as always on this podcast, we have 3 questions that lead to a final vote of, is this worth, in fact, going back again? And the first question is going to be, does it work as a sequel? And you can start it off if you want.
I think it does work as a sequel. It's an interesting place to take the plot. It was a place that the writer and the directors were intimate with, and based on what you said about how this kind of was their initial idea, I can definitely see that. I can definitely see why. Okay, I'll say this. The action is better. Much like kind of the Fast and the Furious, they really double down on the action and the choreography, and I think that the film benefits from that, at least a lot more than Too Fast, Too Furious benefited from focusing on the car scenes. The choreography was much more impressive. The fight scenes had much more weight. And when they're integrated into the plot in the way they were, it was engaging to watch. The only thing is, when you have the protagonist in Rama not really having... He's got investment, but when he doesn't have any say in the plot, and he's just completely... He's like the most reactionary protagonist I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Where all he does is follow orders. But it's, you know, it's still engaging.
Yeah.
And, you know, his independence wasn't a big selling point of the Raid, the first one. And the first one, he's still just following orders. It's just more merited because he's more of a grunt in that one.
Well, he's discovering things in the first one, like, as we go along.
Yeah, he's kept in the dark.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's not... It works as a sequel. I wish that the character had more of a... I wish Rama had more of a dynamic, like, emotional range, or even just more of a dynamic investment in the plot, or say in the plot. But that wasn't the big staple of the original. As far as where it needs to succeed in a sequel... As far as a sequel goes, I think it definitely works.
I also think it works as a sequel. Not only do I think that it is a great continuation of the first Raid, but it also brought a lot of new stuff, and it expanded the world. And you don't exactly have to adhere to those things to make a good sequel, but it is...
I think it's the best way.
It's the best way. It's noticeable and it's refreshing. The characters are more fleshed out this time around, even if they're not 100% fleshed out. They're still more fleshed out than the first time. The action and the stakes are a lot higher. It's a lot more entertaining. And it's just like, you can see that these 2 movies are different. For those reasons, I think it's really obvious that this works as a sequel.
Yeah.
So that's going to be 2 checks right off the bat. So the second question is going to be, is it enjoyable / entertaining? And I'll just make this really easy and quick. It is. It is enjoyable / entertaining. The thing that makes this movie just a little bit more enjoyable to me is the look of it. Because the first Raid is very kind of low budget. And you can tell they're making this on the fly. And it's really impressive what they're able to do with a low budget in the first one. But even with the second raid, like they still have a low budget. They only have $4.5 million, and it's such a better looking movie. It's so much more cleaner. These wide establishing shots of these large fields. You know, you really feel, I think, the city a lot more in this movie, whereas in the first one was a lot more constricted. It was a lot more claustrophobic.
Claustrophobic.
Yeah, it was a lot more claustrophobic in the first one, whereas in this one, you know, they do a good job of keeping characters claustrophobic within certain fight scenes, but the world feels so much bigger. So for those reasons, I think it's obvious, once again, that this, yeah, it's a check. It's enjoyable / entertaining.
I thought the story was good. That doesn't mean that it's like super engaging or I think like flawless. I had some issues with lag when it came to the side characters, especially Wildcard. But I guess the plot, I don't know. The plot is good for what it is. It reminds me a lot of Paul Walker's character from the Fast and the Furious, at least the first two, where he has a voice, but I don't like him. And it's like, I can't fault him on him being a poorly written character. I just don't like that type of character.
Yeah. And
that's kind of how I felt with this plot, where it's, I don't like this plot. I don't like... I can appreciate like the change in focus of we thought it was the crime boss, now we've got to focus on the son. I appreciate stuff like that, but when we're so into this crime boss family and we're not as focused or refined as we were in the first one, where it's essentially just we got to get out of here. This is a little bit more complicated than I personally like having in plots like this.
Yeah.
I like the twists and the turns. I don't like the depth necessarily. Like I don't like who's that character at the end that they're all talking to, like the congressman.
Yeah.
It's just stuff like little stuff like that I want to ding the plot on, but it is complete and it is engaging. The action's like perfect. The action is exactly what it needs to be for a movie like this, and all of the side characters are very solid, except minus Rama, the main character.
I don't think it's going to be a leap to say that this is probably going to be the best hand-to-hand choreography and directing that we'll probably do on this list.
We do a Jackie Chan movie on this list.
We do a Jackie Chan movie on this list, so I mean, maybe I'll hold my tongue for that, but you can't get better than this. Like, this is some of the best directing, like, fight choreography, like, I've ever seen. And I think this is the reason why it has such a big kind of, like, cult following, or at least an underground following, is because, man, I just, like, especially like if you watch like a Jason Bourne movie or something like that, where it just like someone's shaking the camera the whole time. Like some of these there's some fight scenes where I looked at you and I was like, how do they do that? Mm-hmm. Like this is really, it's like really impressive. So even if the story sucked, it would still potentially get a check just because these fight scenes are so original.
We already gave it a check.
I know, but I'm just saying, even if the story wasn't good, like it would still get a check because these fight scenes are that entertaining. They're that engaging.
That's what I'm saying, yeah, is that the fight scenes are so solid. The plot, for everything that I want to ding it on, is still intact. And even though Ram is more of a tool than a character, he doesn't need to be more than that for the story they're trying to tell.
Yeah.
So even though it's not my cup of tea, it's definitely more engaging than not. I would definitely give this a check.
Yeah. So this is really top shelf fighting and directing across the board. So it's going to get 2 checks again. So the last question is going to be, does it need to exist? And you can start off if you want to, but I think it's going to be obvious.
I'm going to say no. I think that everything that you would want to get out of a movie like this, you can get out of the first raid.
Wow.
I think that it improves in places that need to be improved. I think I was blocking the mic. I think it improves in places that needed to be improved. I think it lacked in places that it thought it could get away with not paying too much attention to. It's far from flawless. And honestly, what do you really... I think that these two, between these two movies, the Raid franchise, I think they benefit more from having a simple plot and a character who cannot react to that plot. Instead of a character who chooses not to react like Rama does in the sequel.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't the story that the filmmakers wanted to tell necessarily, based on what you said at the beginning of the podcast, I think the first Raid is almost as good as it gets. I think it benefits from streamlining a lot of stuff when you're so not reliant, but when you want to focus so much on the choreography and the fight scenes.
Like you said, it's simpler. Like, you have one location where you can do all this kind of fighting.
It's not even just the one location. It's the character finding the stuff out with the audience. So the character learning that he's been lied to, and the audience learning it with him. And then a simple goal of we need to escape or else we'll get killed by these criminals. I like the switch in this where it's, instead of we have to focus on the main crime boss, we have to focus on his son. But when you're focus is so much on the fight and not necessarily the twists and the turns of the narrative. You don't really need that. It's just a nice little cherry on top.
Yeah, I can understand that. So it's going to get an X for you?
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a check that it does need to exist, only because I think that this second movie is more fun, right? So the first movie is more contained, it is more simple, but I think there's so much more creativity you can do when you get out of that hotel building, right? So from an influential standpoint, I can see the first raid being very influential in just to simple storytelling and doing great action. But this second raid, I gotta praise it for its ability to have that cherry on top story, but to kind of have all these different locations. Like, you know, we have a whole, how much time do we spend in that prison? Like, it doesn't feel long in
Like
the grand
40 minutes?
Yeah, it's not long in the grand scheme of things, but when you're in there, you feel for a moment like maybe this is where the movie's going to take place. And there's that epic like clay mud fight scene that they do outside. So there's just a lot more nuanced fun and creativity in the second one, where I feel like it does need to exist because it's so influential to the action genre. I think going forward, I think you can get a lot of like really good ideas after just watching the second raid of just like, oh, that's how you keep people engaged. You know, introducing new characters, like raising the stakes with certain fights, for certain weapons that they fight with. I agree that the story is only there to service the action, but it's not like boring.
It's a good blueprint on how to make a better raid movie, but for something to need to exist, it needs to be more fundamental than that. It needs to add more stuff to like action in general, not just the original movie.
Yeah. Gareth Evans, he said that he had an idea for a third raid, but he's just not going to do it. But, you know, I would like to see a third raid movie just to finish it off. Like, why not? Like, just if it almost like the Fast and the Furious movies where they keep raising the stakes and they keep going to new ridiculous kind of heights. I would love to see the final raid is what they could call it.
I'm just looking forward to like the third phone call he's having with his wife, where it's like, yeah, I'm still not coming home.
Still not coming home.
It's been 3 years.
Yeah.
They still works crazy.
So if you're doing that math at home, that's going to be 5 checks and 1 X. So it is going to get one giant check for worth going back again. And yeah, I mean, if you have not seen Raid 1 and 2, I definitely think that they're worth checking out. Not even if it's not for the story, just to see how these talented people get together for these long days on set and are able to shoot some of the best fight scenes that I've ever seen, to be honest. That's going to be a wrap on the Raid 2. As always, make sure you like, subscribe, that you comment below. Make sure you check out Season 1 of the Back Again podcast, where we did Disney animated sequels. And make sure you check out our first 2 episodes of Season 2, where we did Lethal Weapon 2 and Too Fast, Too Furious. We also want to give a special shout out to Neely for doing our opening and closing song. Make sure you follow her on Spotify and check out some more of her music. But outside of that, I think we're just going to keep trucking along on this action movie sequel list, and we'll see what we're doing next week. But you got anything else to add, Drew?
Cowabunga.
All right, we'll see you next time.
Bye, 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 bye.